What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of OneMindSyndicate, and today I'm back to bring you more 40k lore. In this one, we're going to be going over the novel Unremembered Empire that pits the Lion and Guilliman against Conrad Curze. Now, you would think this fight should be pretty one-sided, considering it's two Primarchs against one, but Curze basically has precognition, and he's, I guess you could say, one with the shadows, which is why he kind of gets the whole comparison to him being the Batman of 40k. So let's see if Curze has prepared a victory against his brother Primarchs here. So without further ado, let's dive in. "Then I rejoice," said Guilliman, "but I believe it is past time that the heretics pay a price, a blood price. I think it is past time that a devoted son put a heretic in the damned ground." "Agreed sevenfold," said the Lion in a low, hunting voice. Curze faced them. He stood tall, taller than either of them, a stark figure of lean, long bones and hollowed frame. He looked like a starved giant, towering yet emancipated. His tattered black cloak flowed from his shoulders to the ground like the furled wings of a wounded bird. His slender arms hung at his sides, the huge, slack power claws making his hands disproportionately long. He tilted his head back, his hair lank. He closed his eyes. "Brother," he said, "and you, brother, come and get me." Guilliman surged forwards, but the Lion was faster. Guilliman was robust and dazzling, but the Lion was elegant. The Lion's sword described a buzzing arc in the air as it circled, leaving a bright afterimage briefly stamped on the vision of all the legionaries watching. The blade sliced at Curze's head. He did not move. He was smoke. The power claws of Curze's right hand had snapped out and drove aside the stinging bite of the Lion's sword. The claws of his left met Guilliman's gladius, and he deflected it. Guilliman struck again, driven by fury, and cut through something, but it was only shadow, only the tatter of a cloak. His talons snapped back at him, and he raised his shield. Razored claws ripped sparks off of its surface and shredded its edges. Guilliman hacked again. Nothing. Shadow, and shadow again. The Lion rotated like a dancer, and swung the famous lion sword sidelong at Curze with a two-handed grip. Curze ducked, evaded, and rotated in turn, punching away Guilliman's next strike as he did so. The Lion tilted and swung his sizzling blade in a strike designated to unseam Curze from the groin to the throat. But Curze was no longer there. He had flickered and left, blocked the upswing. Then he smashed his hands into the Lion's face. Blood burst from the strike. A talon had punched clean through the side of the Lion's neck. He reeled backwards, his hand clamped to the wound to staunch it. Some of his men mobbed forward in alarm. "No!" the Lion yelled. Guilliman slammed his ragged shield into Curze and drove him backwards. He stabbed twice with the gladius, rapidly, like a striking snake, and drew blood on the second jab. "Bastard!" Curze hissed. His talons struck Guilliman and knocked him aside, leaving 4 long gouges in his chest plate. Guilliman recovered, sweeping in low with his blade, and then high on the return. Struck, Curze spun away and he fell. When he rose, his right cheek was open to the bone. "Now we start in earnest," he hissed. "Now we finish in earnest," the Lion spat, coming at Curze with his sword at the ready. So this is a very small piece that I wanted to read to you guys. Now the reason why they're going at Curze is because Curze is basically going throughout all of Ultramar, just killing people left and right. And here we have a very interesting scene where we have Guilliman's mother, or I guess I should say his adoptive mother, at the hands of Conrad Curze. So let's go ahead and see this excerpt from the Unremembered Empire once again. Terror touched her heart. She could not fight it. Its fingers were like ice. Like a child, she fell to the floor and scrambled behind the nearest piece of furniture, staying low and crawling to the shadows. Maybe she could hide. Maybe she could. And that's when Officer Purcell was waiting for her beneath the sofa, his severed head at least. His eyes were glazed, his mouth half open, as if in the middle of some great and dismaying surprise. He stared back at her from between the sofa's elegant blue wood. There was someone standing over her, right behind her. His shadow fell across her. He was huge, silent, and powerful, and he stank of blood and war. She wanted to ask him, beg him to make it quick, but her voice would not come out at all. He put a massive hand on her shoulder, and she flinched. "He's here," the shadow said. "Stay down." She turned and looked up, axe raised, alert. Fafnir Bloodbroder stood over her. "You stayed," she whispered. "We don't leave the hearth," he replied, and he looked down at her. "Stay down, and run when I tell you. I will protect you with every drop of my blood." Still cowering, she looked around, as silent as falling snow. The other savage members of Fafnir's pack were creeping into the chamber, weapons ready, ears pricked for any sound of motion. And their silence was extraordinary. They paddled like wolves on snow. Fafnir sighed. "Now we have it," he said. Conrad Curze came out of somewhere. It was not exactly clear where, but it might have been a shadow, or a fold of drapery, or even merely a tiny crack in the wall. But he manifested. He was monstrously vast, a black shadow, power claws unfurled like the flight feathers of a raven. His hair was a halo of filth. His mouth was impossibly large, a yawning blackened maw that stretched the thin white flesh of his angular skull as though it would split it. His right cheek was slashed to the bone and clotted with dark blood. The wolves went for him without hesitation. Their blades were thirsty. Only Fafnir stayed in place. Loyal Fafnir, covering her, defending her with his blade and body. "Run," he told her. "I can't." She was barely able to get up. "You'll damn well run if we tell you to. Now run." A blur. Bo Soren swung his axe, but it was stopped dead by curved talons. Shockeye Flynn flung from his longsword, and was only able to cut smoke. A Primarch. A squad of legions of Astartes. One locked room. The same locked room. How would history repeat itself? How would it be revised? The wolves were the Emperor's executioners, but Curze was something else. Blades hammered off armor and drew flinty sparks from whirling claws. Curze grabbed Salik by the throat and threw him across the chamber into the wall. Bilter Herrick buried his axe in the depths of Curze's darkness, and blood sprayed. Mads Lorson went down on one knee, clutching his torn throat. Trying to stem the blood gushing from it, Kuro Jorvak sailed across the chamber and demolished a chair and table as he landed. Curze was laughing. His pale harlequin face was split by a maniacal grin of delight and bloodshed. He threw Shockeye Flynn through the chamber windows, which detonated as one sheet like a glass bomb. He kicked Bilter Herrick to the ground and cracked his skull with a vicious armor-driven elbow. He took Gudson's sword away, broke it across the wolf's back, and then drove the broken blade into his cheek. Malmor grappled with him, and Nito Knifeson joined him. Both were cast aside, bones snapping and armor cracking. "I told you to run." She could only reply, "I'm sorry." "This is the last chance," he said, raising his axe and rushing the Night Haunter. She finally was able to get up, and she tried to run. A wolf, bleeding and writhing, lay in her path, another to the left, and a third against the wall, already dead. The doors were closed. Something flew over her, a huge thing. It hit the doors ahead of her and smashed them down entirely. It was Fafnir Bloodbroder. The pack leader lay in the wreckage of the doors, and he did not rise. She stopped and turned. Conrad Curze bowed to her. He was a smile made of shadows and smoke and sickness. He was wickedness itself. Tarasha, he sighed. A smile should not be that wide. He will kill you for this, she said. He's dead, Tarasha, Curze replied. And all her strength left her. Grief failed her. She dropped to her knees. No. I killed him, Curze said. Robut and the Lion both. I have studied his story, of course, and the little emperor he pretends to be. He does so to chronicle himself. I have heard of you, Tarasha Uton, Chamberlain Principal, and to all intents, a mother to him. A mother. Thanks to the genius of my father, my kind does not enjoy the luxury of mothers. You are rare. You are a rare and obscene thing, you ragged witch. I wish Robut had been alive to suffer the damages of your death. Uton rose to her full height and looked the monster in the eye. Go to hell, you bastard, she said. And that's when Curze drew back his claws. And there you have it, guys. Really interesting to see Conrad Curze just basically toying around and killing these space wolves with no effort at all the while just appearing like a monster or a demon in the corner of the room. It's very rare we actually get to see these Primarchs interact with the father or any type of parental figures of the Primarchs when they were basically cast into these various types of homeworlds, and Guilliman was one of the lucky ones that he actually had paternal figures around him to raise him. And here we see that his adoptive mother is being targeted by Curze. So it's really interesting to see something like that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you guys want me to cover more of this aspect when it comes to the Primarchs? Because for the most part, you guys just want fights. So that's why I started this reading with a fight between the Primarchs here. So let me know if I should continue that or just keep it with the who punches the best. And yeah, that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks again for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and don't forget to subscribe. And with that being said, this has been the Sound Alchemist, part of OneMindSyndicate, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.